"I want new John Deeres, or I'm done," says the son, but the dad sent him packing that same day, spring of 1978. That's when everything changed on the Patterson farm. Ray Patterson had been working that same 320 acres in central Iowa since he came back from Korea in '53, started with a 1947 Farmall H his father-in-law sold him for $800 and a promise to take care of his daughter. By '78, Ray was running 2 tractors, that same H still going strong, and a 1965 John Deere 4020 diesel he'd bought used in '71. Paid cash, $7,000 he'd saved over 6 years. His son Michael was 24 that spring, came back from college with an agriculture degree and ideas about modernizing everything. Michael had been home 2 weeks when he walked into the kitchen one Saturday morning with a John Deere brochure. "Dad, we need to talk about the operation." Ray was sitting at the table working on the carburetor from the H. Didn't look up. "What about it?" "We're running equipment that's older than I am. The 4020's 13 years old. That Farmall's over 30. We need to upgrade." Ray set down his wrench. "Those tractors work just fine." "They work, but they're not efficient. Look at this." Michael spread the brochure on the table. A brand new John Deere 4440, 120 horsepower, cab with air conditioning, sound guard body, state of the art. This tractor would cut our field time in half. We could handle more acres, grow the operation. "You know what that tractor costs?" $42,000. "But Dad, we can finance it. Dealer says we can put down 15% and carry the rest at 12% over 7 years. Ray picked up his wrench again. "So you want me to go $36,000 in debt?" "It's an investment. With the extra capacity, we could lease the Morrison place, another 200 acres. The numbers work. The numbers work until they don't." Michael sat down across from his father. "Dad, you've been farming the same way for 25 years. Times have changed. Everyone's expanding. The Hendersons just bought 2 new 4640s. The Kramers are running all new equipment. We're getting left behind." "Left behind where?" "In the market. In productivity. Dad, with your methods, we're barely breaking even some years." Ray set the wrench down hard. "Barely breaking even? Son, this farm is paid for, every acre. Both tractors are paid for. Every implement in that shed is paid for. I owe exactly $0 to any bank. That's not barely breaking even, that's winning. It's not winning if we can't grow. Why do we need to grow? Because that's what successful farms do. They expand, they invest, they leverage their equity to build something bigger." Ray stood up and walked to the window. 3 decades of mornings, he'd looked out at those same fields. "Let me tell you about leverage, Michael. Your grandfather lost everything in '32. Had 400 acres in Nebraska, beautiful land. Went into debt buying new equipment in '29. Thought he was building something bigger. Bank took it all, every acre. Died 10 years later working another man's farm for wages. This isn't 1932. No, it's not. But debt works the same way it always has. You owe the bank owns you." "That's old thinking, Dad." Ray turned from the window. "Maybe it is, but old thinking kept this farm in our family. Old thinking put food on the table every year. Old thinking sent you to college without $1 of debt." Michael picked up the brochure. "I'm not saying your way was wrong for your time, but it's my time now. My generation does things differently." "Is that what they taught you at Iowa State? Go into debt?" "They taught me modern farm management, asset optimization, growth strategies. Dad, you're sitting on 320 acres of paid-off equity and running it like it's 1955. Ray's jaw tightened. "1955 put you through school." "I know, and I appreciate that. But I didn't go to school for 4 years to come back and farm with a 30-year-old Farmall. Nobody's making you farm with anything." Michael stood up. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Means if you can't farm without a $42,000 tractor, maybe you can't farm. So that's it? Your way or nothing?" Ray picked up the carburetor and the wrench. My way is the only way on this farm. When it's your farm, you can make your own decisions. When will it be my farm? When you're 80. It'll be your farm when you understand what it takes to keep it. Michael grabbed the brochure off the table. You know what? Fine. I got offers. Henderson Farms wants a foreman. They're running a real operation. New equipment, modern methods, professional management. Then maybe you should take it. The kitchen went silent. Michael stared at his father. You're serious. As a heart attack. You want to go work for Henderson. Go work for Henderson. Dad, I'm trying to help this farm succeed. This farm has succeeded for 25 years. It'll keep succeeding. Not if you don't adapt. Ray, set down the carburetor one more time. Michael, you think success is new tractors and more acres. I think success is sleeping at night knowing I don't owe any man nothing. We got different definitions, and that's fine. But this is my farm. I worked 30 years building something nobody can take from me. I'm not throwing that away because some dealer says I need a new tractor. So I either farm your way or leave. I'm saying if you need $42,000 worth of tractor to feel successful, you won't find that here. Michael walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. The Hendersons are going to dominate this county in 10 years. All the progressive farms will, and you'll still be here running a 30-year-old Farmall. Probably will be. Michael shook his head and walked out. Ray heard the pickup start, heard gravel spraying as Michael drove off. He sat back down at the table, picked up the wrench. His hands were steady, but something in his chest felt heavy. His wife Sarah came in from the living room. You heard all that? I did. You think I was wrong. Sarah poured herself coffee and sat down. I think you both want the same thing. You just see different paths. His path leads to debt. Maybe. Or maybe he sees opportunities you don't. Ray set down the wrench again. Sarah, I've seen what debt does. Seen good men lose everything because they borrowed against tomorrow. I know, but Ray, he's not wrong that things are changing. Changing doesn't mean better. Maybe not, but he's our son. He spent 4 years learning how to do this. Shouldn't we at least consider what he's saying? I considered it. Answer's no. Sarah sipped her coffee. You know he might really leave. I know. And that doesn't bother you. Ray picked up the carburetor, turned it in his hands. Course it bothers me. But what bothers me more is teaching him that debt is the answer. That bigger is always better. That old equipment means old thinking. So you'd rather lose your son than buy a tractor? I'd rather my son understand what I spent 30 years building. But I can't make him understand. He's got to learn it himself. Michael didn't come home that night, or the next. Ray kept working, planted corn with the 40-20 and the old 6-row planter, same as always. 3 weeks later, Sarah came out to the shed where Ray was greasing the Farmall. Michael called. Ray didn't look up. He take the Henderson job? He did. Starts Monday. They're putting him in charge of their new equipment division. Ray nodded slowly. Good for him. Ray, I mean it. If that's what he wants, good for him. He said he'd like to come by Sunday, talk. Doors always open. Sunday came. Michael pulled in around 2 in the afternoon, found Ray in the machine shed, changing oil on the 40-20. Hey, Dad? Michael. Awkward silence. Finally, Michael spoke. I wanted to let you know I took the Henderson position. Your mother told me. Congratulations. Thanks, it's good money. They're running 8,000 acres now. All new iron. It's impressive. I'm sure it is. More silence. Michael walked over to the Farmall H, sitting in the corner. You still running this, old girl? Every week. Michael ran his hand along the fender. I learned to drive on this tractor. You were 6. You let me steer while you worked the pedals. Ray straightened up from the 40-20. You remember that? I remember everything about this farm, Dad. Every field, every piece of equipment. I'm not trying to disrespect what you built. I know. I just see things differently. Ray wiped his hands on a rag. Michael, you're going to do fine at Henderson's. You're smart. You got education. You'll help them build something big. But I hope 10 years from now you'll understand why I said no. Michael looked at his father. What do you mean? I mean the Hendersons are running 8,000 acres on borrowed money. They got beautiful new equipment, impressive operation, but they're leveraged to the hilt. Commodity prices drop, interest rates go up one bad year, and they could lose it all. Or they could double their operation. Could. But Michael, success in farming isn't about how big you get. It's about still being here when the hard years come. And the hard years always come. Michael was quiet for a moment. You really think they might fail? I think they're gambling. Might pay off. Might not. But I won't gamble with this farm. Your grandfather lost everything gambling. I promised myself I'd never do that. So you'll just stay small forever? I'll stay solvent forever. There's a difference. Michael nodded slowly. I still think you're wrong about growth, but I understand why you think the way you do. That's all I ask. They stood there in the shed, spring light coming through the door. The Farmall H sat between them, 31 years old and still running. Dad, when I have my own place someday, I'm probably going to do things different. I know. But I'll remember what you taught me. Ray extended his hand. Michael shook it. That's all a father can ask. Michael left for Henderson Farms. Ray kept farming his 320 acres. The years rolled on. 1981 hit. Interest rates went to 18%. Commodity prices crashed. The farm crisis started. Henderson Farms had expanded to 12,000 acres by then. They'd leveraged everything to buy more land, more equipment. 6 new John Deere 8640s, 4-wheel drive monsters, 270 horsepower each, cost them $130,000 apiece. The bank loved it, until they didn't. Ray heard through the grapevine that Henderson owed north of $20 million. The operation was impressive to look at. Rows of green iron lined up like soldiers. Grain bins that could hold 500,000 bushels. Shop building bigger than most people's houses. But when corn dropped to $2.20 a bushel in '82, the numbers stopped working. Michael was assistant operations manager by then. Good salary, company truck. He'd call Sarah every few weeks. Tell her about the operation, the acres they were planting, the yields they were getting. Ray would listen from the other room. Never picked up the phone. Spring of '83 came late. Wet. Ray got his corn in by mid-May with the 40-20 and the old planter. Took him longer than the big operations, but he got it done. Henderson Farms was running 3 shifts, planting around the clock with their big equipment. Michael was working 18-hour days. Sarah told Ray that Michael sounded tired on the phone. He's learning, Ray said. Learning what? That big operations have big problems. June came. Then July. The crops looked good. Ray's 320 acres were as pretty as he'd ever seen them. The rain had been perfect, temperature just right. He was out walking beans in early August when he saw the Henderson equipment parked along the road. All of it. 6 of those big 8640s, the combines, the grain trucks. Everything lined up like they were getting ready for a parade, but they weren't running. Middle of harvest prep, and they were sitting still. Ray asked about it at the co-op the next day. Bank pulled their operating loan, the manager said. Henderson can't buy fuel or parts, can't pay employees, they're done. Done how? Done. Bankruptcy. Banks taking everything. Ray drove home slow, told Sarah that night. What about Michael? She asked. I don't know. You should call him. He knows where home is. 2 weeks went by. The auction was set for September 15th. Ray saw the ads in the farm news. Complete dispersal. Everything must go. Sarah kept saying he should call Michael. Ray kept saying Michael was a grown man. Then one evening in early September, headlights came up the drive. Ray was in the shed, greasing the Farmall, 36 years old and still running strong. Michael got out of a pickup that wasn't the company truck, walked into the shed. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. "Dad, Michael, you got a minute?" "Always." Michael leaned against the workbench, looked at the old equipment, the Farmall, the 40-20, the implements that had been there since he was a kid. "Henderson's are finished." "I heard. Bank took everything, the whole operation, 20 million in debt, 3 years of profit gone in 6 months. Ray set down the grease gun. "What about you?" "I'm out of a job. They let everyone go last week. Can't make payroll." "I'm sorry, son." Michael laughed, no humor in it. "You were right about all of it. The debt, the expansion, the risk. You called it 6 years ago, and I thought you were just being stubborn." "Michael." "No, let me finish. I watched it happen, Dad. Every single thing you said would happen. The bank owned them. When prices dropped, they couldn't make payments. They tried to double down, borrowed more, bought more land, thought they could grow their way out of it, just dug the hole deeper." He walked over to the Farmall H, ran his hand over the faded paint. "Mr. Henderson, he was at his desk when the bank came, had his head in his hands, crying. 40 years building that operation, and it was gone in a morning." Ray picked up a rag, wiped his hands slowly. "Debt's a hard master." "Yeah." Michael turned to face his father. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I'll understand if the answer is no." "Ask." "Do you still need help on the farm?" Ray set down the rag. "What about your ideas? Modern methods, growth strategies, asset optimization?" "I think I'd like to learn your methods, if you're still willing to teach them." Ray looked at his son, saw the man he'd become, saw the lessons he'd learned the hard way. "Farmall needs a tune-up. You remember how?" "I remember everything you taught me." "Then let's get to work." They worked side by side that evening, father and son. Ray showed Michael how to gap the spark plugs just right, how to set the points, the same way he'd shown him when he was 12. "You keep the manuals for this thing?" Michael asked. "Don't need manuals. Know every bolt on her. What if something breaks you can't fix?" 36 years. Hasn't happened yet. That's the beauty of these old machines. They're simple, built to last, built to be fixed. Michael was quiet for a while, working. "I went to the Henderson auction preview yesterday," he said finally. "Yeah? Those big 8640s, 3 years old, barely broke in. Know what they're estimated to bring?" "What?" 40, maybe 50,000 each. Banks got them listed at 60 to 80. They'll be lucky to get 40. 130,000 tractors, 3 years old, selling for a third of what they cost. Ray nodded slowly. Always happens. When everyone's selling at once, nobody wants to buy. There were guys there from the bank, standing around with clipboards, looking at everything like it was theirs. I guess it was. That's what collateral means. Michael set down the wrench he was holding. "Dad, I was so sure you were wrong, so certain that your way was outdated, that progress meant bigger equipment, more acres, more leverage. You weren't wrong to think that. Lot of people do. But they're wrong. Some of them make it work, but most don't. The ones that make it work, they get lucky with timing, right weather, right prices, right interest rates all at once, but you can't build a life on luck." They finished the tune-up as the sun was setting. Ray started the Farmall. It fired right up, settled into that familiar rhythm. "Music," Ray said. "What?" "That sound. It's music. Same sound it made in 47 will make that same sound long after I'm gone." Michael listened to the old engine. "Can I ask you something?" "Shoot. Were you ever tempted? When everyone else was expanding, buying new equipment, leveraging up, were you ever tempted to do the same?" Ray shut off the Farmall. Let the silence settle. Every day, especially in the 70s, corn was $4, beans were 10. Seemed like everyone was getting rich. The dealer would call me once a month, tell me about the new models, the financing deals, how I was leaving money on the table. But you never did it. Never did. You know why? Why? Ray walked to the shed door, looked out at the fields in the fading light. Because I remembered my father's face when they took his farm. I was 8 years old, watched men load our equipment on trucks, watched them put a lock on the barn, watched my father become somebody else's hired man. He turned to Michael. I promised myself that would never be me, that I'd build something slow and steady, something nobody could take, even if it meant staying small. Even if it meant running old equipment while everyone else had new. Michael joined him at the door. You ever regret it? Not once. You know what I regret? That it took you 6 years and a Henderson bankruptcy to learn what I couldn't teach you in a conversation. Some lessons you can't teach have to be learned. Yeah? Wish that wasn't true, but it is. They stood there in the doorway, father and son, while darkness settled over the farm. Dad, if I come back your way. No arguments about equipment, no pushing for expansion. Your methods, your timeline. You sure? You'll be working with equipment older than you are. I'm sure. I've seen the alternative. Ray extended his hand. Michael shook it. Welcome home, son. Thanks, Dad. They worked together after that. Ray was 61. Michael was 30. They planted with the old equipment, harvested with it, fixed it when it broke. The farm didn't grow. Still 320 acres, still the same old tractors. The Farmall H was 40 years old. The 4020 was pushing 20. But they were paid for. The land was paid for. And when they sold their crops, the money was theirs. The 80s were brutal for agriculture. Interest rates hit 21% in 81. Farm crisis, they called it. Small operations all over the Midwest went under. Big operations too. Henderson wasn't the only one. The Kramers lost their place in 84. The Johnsons in 85. The Weavers in 86. All of them had expanded in the 70s. All of them thought bigger was better. Ray and Michael kept farming. By 1988, half the farms in the county had changed hands. Bank sales, foreclosures, bankruptcy auctions. The Patterson farm stayed in the family. One evening in the fall of 91, Michael came in from the fields. Ray was at the kitchen table doing paperwork. Dad, the Morrison place went up for sale. Ray looked up. Yeah. Bank finally gave up trying to find a buyer. They're willing to deal. 200 acres for $60,000. That's cheap for that land. It is. Good ground too. Borders our North 40. Ray set down his pen. You thinking we should buy it? Michael sat down across from him. I'm thinking we could. We got the equity. We got $60,000 in the bank. We could pay cash. What about equipment? We'd need bigger tractors to work 520 acres. Maybe. Or maybe we just work a little longer each season. Ray smiled. That sounds like something I would have said. I learned from the best. What changed your mind? 13 years ago, you wanted to expand to 800 acres with borrowed money. Michael looked out the window at the fields. 13 years ago, I thought success meant growth. Now I know success means still being here, still having a choice. So you want to buy the Morrison place? Only if we can pay cash. Only if it doesn't put us at risk. Only if we're doing it for the right reasons. What are the right reasons? Because it's good land, because it'll be here for the next generation, because we can afford it without borrowing a dime. Ray picked up his pen again. Then let's make an offer. They bought the Morrison place in December of 91, paid cash, $58,000. The bank was happy to take it. That spring, they planted 520 acres with the same old equipment. Took longer. but they got it done. The Farmall H was 44 years old, still running. Ray was 72 when he handed Michael the deed to the farm. They were in the machine shed. Ray had just finished changing the oil on the 4020. "It's yours now," Ray said. "All 520 acres, paid in full." Michael took the deed, looked at it for a long time. "I won't let you down. You already made me proud, son. You came back, you learned, you built something that'll last. We built it together." "Yeah, we did." Ray walked over to the Farmall H. 49 years old now, still red, still running. "You going to keep her?" "Long as she runs." "That'll be a while yet." Michael stood next to his father, both of them looking at the old tractor. "You know what I tell people when they ask why we run old equipment?" "What's that?" "I tell them it's paid for. I tell them it's reliable. I tell them it's built to last. But you know what I really tell them?" "What?" "I tell them it represents a way of thinking, a way of farming, a way of life." Ray nodded slowly. "That's the truth of it." "Yeah." They stood there in the shed, 3 generations of wisdom built into one old tractor. Outside, 520 acres of debt-free ground stretched to the horizon. Not the biggest farm in the county, never would be, but it was still there, still theirs, still in the family, and that Farmall H, still running strong, because some things are built to last, and some lessons are worth learning, even if they take time. Michael's son asked him once why they didn't buy new tractors like other farms. Michael took him out to the shed, showed him the Farmall H. "Your great-grandfather bought this tractor in 47, he said. "Your grandfather farmed with it for 50 years. I learned to drive on it, and one day you will too." "Why?" "Because this tractor represents something bigger than horsepower or efficiency. It represents wisdom, patience, the understanding that success isn't about how fast you grow, but whether you're still here when the growing is done." The boy ran his hand over the faded red paint. "Will it still be here when I'm grown? If we take care of it, it'll be here for your grandchildren." "That's a long time. That's the point, son. That's the whole point." Years later, Michael told that story at a Farm Bureau meeting. Young farmers, most of them struggling with debt, equipment payments, land payments, operating loans at 15%. One of them raised his hand. "But Mr. Patterson, how do you compete? Everyone else has GPS guidance, variable rate planters, telemetry systems. You're running tractors from the 60s. Michael smiled. Same smile his father used to give. "Compete at what? Growing corn? We grow plenty. Making money? We're profitable every year. Staying in business? We've been here 70 years. But you could grow more with new equipment. Probably could. But here's what I learned the hard way. Growing more doesn't mean keeping more. The year Henderson Farms went under, they produced 1 million bushels of corn. Know how much they kept? Silence. None. Bank took it all. They were growing corn for their creditors, not themselves. Another young farmer spoke up. So you're saying don't expand, don't modernize. I'm saying know the difference between growth and wisdom. Growth is easy. Any fool with a banker can expand. Wisdom is building something that lasts, something you own, something nobody can take. He pulled out a photograph, showed it around. This is my father in 1978, standing next to that Farmall H, 31 years old then. My son wanted him to buy a new $42,000 John Deere. My father said no. You know why? Why? Because he understood something most people don't. In farming, surviving the bad years is more important than maximizing the good years. The good years take care of themselves. It's the bad years that break you. What happened to your son? Someone asked. Michael looked surprised, then laughed. That was me. I was the son. Left the farm because I thought my father was stuck in the past. Went to work for Henderson, thought I knew better. The room got quiet. How'd that work out? The first farmer asked. I learned that my father was right. Learned it the hard way, watching a $20 million operation collapse in 6 months. Came home with my tail between my legs, asking if he still needed help. What did he say? He handed me a wrench and told me the Farmall needed a tune-up. Michael put the photo away. That was 1984. Been working this farm his way ever since. And you know what? We're still here. Still profitable. Still debt-free. Can't say that about most of the farms that were bigger than us 40 years ago. The meeting ended. Several young farmers came up to talk. Michael gave them all the same advice his father gave him. Build slow. Pay cash. Keep what you have. Don't let bankers or dealers tell you what you need. Most importantly, understand that farming isn't about impressing your neighbors with new equipment. It's about still being here when your neighbors are gone. One young farmer, couldn't have been more than 25, hung back until everyone else left. "Mr. Patterson, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Do you ever regret it? Not expanding when you had the chance? Not having the biggest operation?" Michael thought about that. "You know what I regret? 6 years, 1978 to 84. 6 years I wasted being angry at my father for being wise. 6 years I could have been learning from him. That's my only regret. But the farm, do you wish it was bigger? Son, I got 520 acres of paid-for ground, 2 tractors that run perfect, equipment that does what I need it to do, no debt, no stress, no banker calling me when prices drop. You tell me what I should regret." The young farmer nodded slowly. "I got 200 acres, just bought a new combine, 180,000. The payment's killing me. Can you send it back? Contract's signed. Then you got 2 choices. Sell it to someone else and take the loss, or make it work and pray for good weather and good prices. What would you do?" Michael looked at him straight. "I'd sell it. Take the loss. Learn the lesson cheap while you're young. Because that combine's going to teach you the same lesson one way or another. Either you sell it now and lose 20,000, or you keep it and lose the farm. That's harsh. That's reality. Debt doesn't care about your dreams. It only cares about payments. And payments come due whether the crop's good or not." The young farmer left. Michael never knew if he took the advice, but he hoped so. The Farmall H sits in that shed today. 77 years old, still runs when they start it. Michael's grandson is 12 now, learning to drive on it, same as Michael did, same as Michael's son did. The paint's faded, the seat's been recovered twice. Some of the gauges don't work anymore, but the engine fires every time. The clutch is smooth, the steering's tight. It'll run another 70 years if they take care of it, and it'll keep teaching the same lesson it's taught for 3 generations. That success in farming isn't about how big you get. It's about still being there when the big ones are gone. Still teaching lessons. Still proving that sometimes the old ways aren't just old. Sometimes they're wisdom.